Chilling Reign has been out for about a week as I record this video, so let's take a look at what I think are going to be the best 5 decks in Chilling Reign. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch, and today we're doing something slightly different. We're going to look through 5 deck lists of the top 5 decks in the Chilling Reign format. Now, bear in mind that the set has only been out for 1 week, and we are yet to see the full ramifications of what these new cards are going to bring to the standard format, but I think we can have a pretty solid idea as to what the best 5 decks are going to be. So, in this video, I'm going to show you, in order of 5th to 1st, the 5 decks that I think are going to be the best 5 in Chilling Reign. So at number 5, I'm ranking ADP Zacian as the 5th best deck in the format. It's a bit of a controversial call because obviously ADP is a very, very strong Pokemon. The GX attack you've heard about ad nauseum by now, so I don't need to talk about the card, but one of the things that this deck does really, really well is it deals with decks that aren't the top 5 decks, right? So it's got a really good matchup against anything that's a little bit less consistent, anything that's maybe targeting down weaknesses of Pokemon that are in the top 5 decks. So it's good at doing that. It also has a pretty solid game against all of the decks that are in the top 5, but it does struggle in the sense that it has a very linear game plan. Once you've got the GX attack off and you start attacking with Zacian, you are in a pretty good position. But if you miss that GX attack, or if you stumble at any point during the game, a better deck list will be able to beat this ADP deck. And one of the things that has caused a lot of problems for ADP is the new path to the Peak Stadium, which lots of decks in the top 5 are playing. So that is one of the weaknesses of this deck, and part of the reason why I think it is still incredibly strong, but maybe not quite as strong as it has been in the past. One of the other things that we get to add in this deck list is the brand new Galarian Zapdos. Obviously, Eternitus is a very strong deck. Surprise, it will be coming up in the top 5. And this particular card can take a one-shot on Eternitus, which gives ADP a slightly better matchup in that particular game. But to be honest, I still think that ADP is a little bit less of a threat than it has been in the past, purely because Path to the Peak is so prevalent in all of the decks in the standard format at the moment. At number 4 on my list, it is the brand new Ice Rider Calirex Vmax. This card is super good, and to be honest, I think a lot of people are underrating it. I think that it's a really, really good attacker. It's got great synergy with a lot of good cards, and it can take on pretty much anything in the top 5 without too much trouble. You might say, Mitch, this card has weakness to metal. You've just said that ADP is the 5th best deck. Why are you not saying that ADP is better than this one? And I'll say something about that in a second, but one of the key reasons that ADP is worse is because of Path to the Peak. This deck can play it, and it doesn't really care too much about the effect. Like, I mean, if Path to the Peak is down, that's good, but if it's not, it doesn't matter, because we can run the Inteleon line with Shady Dealings for some extra consistency, and because we've got the Inteleon line, we can also play the new Quick Shooting Inteleon, which will augment our damage quite nicely. So think about the fact that our Ice Rider Calirex is going to be dealing 250 damage with Max Lance if we discard 2 Water Energy. If we have 2 Inteleon in play, which is not unlikely, we can deal 270, which is going to knock out any tag team in the game, apart from ADP, or we're going to be dealing 290, which is enough to kill every tag team, but it's also very close to knocking out a lot of VMAXs. In fact, it's about 30 damage away. And since we've got our Drizzols, we can search out cards like Leon as one-of supporters really, really easily. I think this card is actually capable of some pretty big knockouts that people aren't quite ready for yet, which makes me think that this deck is going to be the 4th best deck in the format. The other thing that this deck can do, which other decks can't do as well, is consistently accelerate energy through cards like Melanie. It's not quite as consistent as a welder. I mean, you don't get as much acceleration, but I think this card's actually better. We can pick up the water energy that we are discarding with our VMAX, and we can also search it out thanks to Drizzile, which is really, really strong. Overall, I think that this list is really something. I think it's something that people need to get their heads around, because at some point it's going to come up trumps against a lot of decks in the top 5. This list comes from my friend Blake. He's been playing it quite a lot, and he says that it's got really good matchups across the board. It's capable of beating Rider Calirex, it's capable of beating Eternitus, it's capable of beating a whole bunch of really prevalent cards. So do not be surprised if this card ends up being something bigger in the future, but for now I'm going to temper expectations. It's around about as good as ADP, so I'm going to put it in 4th place. Coming up in 3rd is a deck that has gained a lot of good things in Chilling Reign, but it's also gained a very strong enemy, and that is Rapid Strike Urshifu Vmax. This card is an incredibly powerful attacker. It's super efficient. Only 1 energy means that we are able to deal consistently high damage easily across the game. Gale Thrust deals 150 for 1 energy, and Gmax Rapid Flow, a very powerful attack if you can get your timing correct. One of the things that this deck has gained from Chilling Reign is, of course, the Quick Shooting Inteleon, which helps augment that damage. Yet again, we get those extra damage ticks that can turn our 150 into 170 or 190, and we can start 2-hitting things that we once would have had to 3-hit, which is very, very powerful. We also gain the new Persimmon, which means that our Gmax Rapid Flow will do 30 more damage to each Pokemon that we target on the bench, which synchronizes quite nicely with our Telescopic Sight card. So instead of dealing 120 to 2 Pokemon on the bench, we can instead deal 180, which is going to knock out things like Dedenne, Crobat, Eldegoss, Mawile, a whole bunch of really valuable 2-price support Pokemon that lots of decks have on the bench. We will also be able to search out these cards quite nicely, thanks to, again, Shady Dealings, Drizzile, and Inteleon. Those cards having the synchronicity, I guess you could say, with the Quick Shooting Inteleon is a massive, massive win. It does, however, gain some big problems to deal with in Rider Calirex. We have Jirachi-GX in the deck, but lots of Shadow Rider decks are playing Path to the Peak, which will turn our Psychic Zone ability off, so it is a little bit sketchy at the moment. I'm putting this one at 3rd because it has so much potential, it's so easy to get going, and it's so consistent at doing what it does. But I don't think that it's got the I don't think it's got the damage output to consistently beat Rider Calirex, especially if they're playing Path to the Peak. It does, however, have an incredibly strong matchup up against a deck that I'm putting at the number 2 spot. And that deck at number 2 is Eternitus Vmax, a very, very powerful, very efficient attacker that hits the best deck, Rider Calirex, for weakness. Obviously, a really, really powerful choice in the current standard format. It does have one card that can potentially cause some problems to it, and that's Galarian Zapdos. But you'll notice that this deck list is slightly different from the video that came out yesterday. We've got 2 copies of Big Charm in the deck to try and save ourselves against that particular card. I think, though, that this deck, apart from Rider Calirex and Zapdos, has the best matchup spread across the board. It can beat ADP quite easily. It can get knockouts on things like the Rider Calirex and also the Rider Calirex. It can still beat Urshifu, which is very, very important. It's super consistent with energy acceleration from Galarian Moltres. It has Denial in Liepard V and also Yveltal. One of the things that it might struggle to do is beat some of the, not the jankier decks, but the less consistent decks in the format. But if you are playing against the top 5 decks, this one is an incredibly good choice. The fact that it has weakness advantage over Rider Calirex is the reason that I'm putting it in 2nd place. It is about as good in my mind as the Rapid Strike Urshifu, which I think are clearly the 2nd and 3rd best decks in the format. But frankly, there is only one choice for that number 1 spot. And that deck is, of course, Rider Calirex. Look at this card. This card is incredible. Underworld Door, accelerating energy and drawing cards every turn is exceptional. Max Geist is a great attack both early, mid, and late game. It has almost everything covered. It's resistant to fighting decks, which means that Single Strike and Rapid Strike Urshifu are going to struggle against it. It has weakness against Dark-type Pokemon, which means it's gonna struggle against Eternitus occasionally, but we do have cards like Mewtwo and Mew and Galarian Zapdos in this particular list to deal with that. I think that this deck is probably my favorite one out of all of the decks in Chilling Reign, and it is definitely one of, if not the best deck from Chilling Reign. This particular list is a slightly more aggressive version of the deck, designed to take some more knockouts, but I do have a Path to the Peak list that I want to show you, which is this list here. It's a little bit less techy than the first version, but it is definitely a lot more frustrating to play against. Path to the Peak, we've mentioned it before, a very, very good card, and the fact that we can control whether we have Path to the Peak in play by using our Marshadows with Resetting Hole means that we can use our abilities on our turn. We can use Underworld Door to power up attackers like Trevenant and Dusknoir, whilst our opponents don't get to use them because we replace the stadium with Path of the Peak after we've finished using our own abilities. So I think that this version of the deck is really, really good as well. I feel like it has a slightly weaker Eternitus matchup. Obviously, Path of the Peak does create problems there, but I think that Eternitus is going to be able to get around this one a little bit better. But this deck, I think, is probably the best list. Like, if I had to play a list right now, it would probably be this one, closely followed by the techie version, and then the other lists, whatever we've talked about today. A bunch of really strong stuff, but I think you can all agree Shadow Rider Calirex is by far the best card in this set, and it is shot out of the gates. It is absolutely shot out of the gates as the best deck in the format. So if you are going to be playing in either an online tournament, or if you're lucky enough, a real life one, then make sure you have something to deal with this card, because it is definitely the best thing around at the moment. So there you have it. There is my ranking of the top 5 decks in Chilling Reign. Obviously, it is just my opinion. If you have a different one, that's okay. You're more than welcome to. Leave a comment down below if you think maybe something has missed out that shouldn't have. Maybe the order needs to be shifted around, or maybe you've got a deck that you think is better than all 5 of these that no one has thought of yet. Let me know down there. Whilst you're there, leave a like. That would be fantastic. And hopefully you enjoy playing in the Chilling Reign format with one of these 5 decks, or at least you can beat these 5 decks. And thank you to all of my channel members who stick around as usual to see their names read out at the end. Thank you to Azazel and to Dadbod, who are both amazing Ascended members. I appreciate you guys. Fernando, Yolo, Stephen Ty, Agent Abel, Austin, Josiah, Liftovar, Robsy, Brad Shings, Brad, Justin, Croco, Taco, and Drew. Appreciate your support as usual, as well as all of the other Mega Sableyes over here who are doing a fantastic job of supporting the channel. If you want to do that, it costs $3 Australian a month. It's less than a cup of coffee. It's like dirt to Americans. If you feel comfortable doing so, there's a join button down below. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining me for this very interesting video. Hopefully you've liked it, and I will see you next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.